welcome. You are welcome. You are welcome. You're welcome to another edition of Career Money Talk with Ephraim. And I hope you find this session beneficial. Today I'm going to be speaking about personal development in the workplace. And I hope you find it helpful in your own personal life as well as in whatever you do or for others as well. Um, this topic is coined from one of the chapters of my book, Succeeding in Your Career, and this was launched in 2021. Succeeding in Your Career by me, and the chapter 3 is Be Ready to Learn the Skill. That's what I talked about, and I think it's one essential skill it's that's important to have in a workplace. Personal development. It's a key topic that you find interesting. If you get a copy of my book, you can get a copy of my book on Amazon. This very book, I've had a lot of comments, positive impact, and for the people that have read it, they find it quite useful. So I'll encourage you to get a copy of the book on Amazon and also on my website. Okay, so we are going to dive right into the topic today, and I'll just go straight because I know that some other people will listen to the teaching later. So I'll just go straight to not waste a lot of time. I'm hoping to complete this teaching in 20 minutes. Um, yeah, so I'll take questions afterwards for those on YouTube and those on Instagram. Feel free to ask you questions. I'll take them after the session. So, personal development, what does that mean? I have taken the liberty to get a dictionary meaning. So, this is where an employee consciously and unconsciously improves their skills and ability at work. Sometimes the employer provide assistance, some very organized workplace, they have a learning system where all the learnings are automated and you get a notification per time when you're supposed to come up, when they're supposed to be done. So, but for most people, it doesn't happen like that. So you have to actively go out there to look for the information. So it could be consciously or unconsciously, you're developing yourself in one way or another in a work environment. Personal development has its roots in psychology um, via the Maslow hierarchy of need. I think the Maslow hierarchy of need is one interesting concept that you should master as a worker. And if you know what that triangle, or should I say pyramid, for the Maslow's hierarchy of need, you have the basic needs, you have the safety needs, you have the social, you have um, the fourth one, which is the fifth one, which is self-actualization, and esteem. Esteem is the fourth one. So at every point in time, we are always moving on that ladder of Maslow hierarchy of needs, and that's if you want to view training or self-development, that's how you should look at it. So physiological needs, safety need, social need, esteem need, and self-actualization. I will just go just to brief around all of this hierarchy to see where you fit in and how you can move to the next level. Now, because humans are always looking for learning new things, they are eager to move to the next step. And it's like that for every aspect of our lives. So, first of all, what is this Maslow hierarchy of need? It shows the progression of humans and what they are interested in. So, in the first ladder, you see the physiological needs. The physiological needs are your basic needs as human, which is your food, shelter, and clothing. So, this is standard. This is the minimum requirement for every human. But of course, in our society, it's possible that some people are still struggling with this basic human need of food, for example, or housing, or shelter, clothing, food, and shelter, or clothing. So you see people on the street begging alms just to make ends meet. So all of this adds up to the first level. So before you can, I know that it's possible for your needs to overlap on the different ladder. Well, focusing on the first ladder is what you should do when you're just starting out so that you know that you have conquered that level before you move to the next level. Otherwise, you would always come back to fight that level. You shouldn't focus too much attention on a particular level until you have conquered it. Once you have conquered it, you can move on to the next level where you can now focus on conquering that level. So if you have not conquered your basic need of food, shelter, and clothing, then there's work to be done. Remember, we're talking about personal development. So basic needs, food, shelter, clothing, are the first step to learning about your own self and getting to the self actualization point where you want to be. The second need is the safety need. A lot of people that I know have met all of their basic needs or physiological needs of food, shelter, housing. They don't have to worry about that. But again, when you get to the next step, that's when you start saying the safety need. Safety need is when you feel threatened by the first level, which is your physiological needs, and you are not sure that you have it secured. And that's the essence of doing all the things that you need to do, like investing, for example, saving, and diversifying your portfolio just in case something happens to your primary source of income. You are able to meet all those other needs. So you're not left on the street begging. You have to meet all those other needs by what you do. The third phase of the Maslow's hierarchy of need is the social need. Like I said, it's possible for you to have overlapping steps in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but that is a standard. Once you have settled the first one, settled the second one, the third one comes to what you are now really interested in, which is your social need, the need to belong, the need to be accepted, the need to be loved. Those are needs, genuine needs that um, are human needs to survive in the world. So we expect you to have those needs, and it's something that is acceptable. So you have to be deliberate about this one as well. As you are deliberate about your physiological needs and your safety needs, you need to also be deliberate about your social need, which is um, being friendly. Some people say that to get friends, you have to be friendly. So You have to deliberately go out of your way to make friends for yourself. That way, you have that network that you can fall back to when you're having any issues. So, social need is important, just like the first two. Then you have the esteem. Esteem is when you are now a bit more confident about life. You don't worry about basic physiological needs or safety. You are so confident that the level at which you are, even if you don't work for the next 6 months or 1 year, you will still have a house, you will still have food, you still have clothing. You don't worry about safety net. You have friends around, or loved ones that are help that you can call and you can reach out to. So these are esteem needs. And the last one on that hierarchy is self-actualization. The self-actualization point is where you you have reached a stage in your life where you feel like you are living the life. You don't have any worries. You don't even worry if you don't have friends. You don't worry about physiological needs of wearing designers clothes or food, shelter, clothing, stuff like that. You're not really concerned about that. You feel like you're contributing your culture to the development of the world at large. You feel like you're living your purpose. And I think that's where we ought to be as people that or people that work in a workplace where things where you feel your contribution is making an impact on the bottom line and overall bigger picture. Now I have just run through all these five um Maslow hierarchy of needs so that you will see where your personal development is supposed to take you. So while you are doing your daily job every day, you have the bigger picture in mind where you feel like you're fulfilling purpose, um, where you feel like your contribution to whatever you're doing, where you are meeting a need. So that's the place of self actualization. And to get there, there are four major areas that you need to look at in your life as a staff or an employee or as a business person. So one of those areas is your mental growth. Um, the second area is your physical growth. The third area is your emotional growth, and your and the last one is your spiritual growth. Now, a lot of people will look at life as only physical. No, actually, life is much spiritual as it is physical. So don't be deceived that all that you see is all there is. There are a lot of things that go on behind the scene. And if you are not aware, you might just be missing out on a lot of things. So, four main areas, and you see this in different texts. Even if you Google it, you see different texts talking about all of these four energies. Some people call it four senses. Some call it, some have it as five. They add emotion, social growth to it, which I think is mostly in all of the four elements that I have mentioned. So you have the physical. How do you develop yourself physically? Um, that's not my strong point, but it's very important, which is your exercise. For you to have optimum result and participation in the workplace, you need to develop your physical stamina so that you don't feel sleepy when you're supposed to be working. You don't feel tired every now and then. You're doing some sort of physical exercise and you're helping your blood to flow better and faster, and your body is active or more active because of that physical exercise. So that is very important. So you can create a routine. It could just be 10 minutes of your day and you do something physical. It could just be walking. I think what is advice is to have 10,000 steps a day. If you can do that, very good for you. but make sure you're doing something physical exercise to get to that self actualization stage where you need to be. The second one is the mental one, where I think a lot of people focus on in the work area or in their work life. Yes, mental is good, and I talk about it a lot in my book. So you probably find a lot of things that I talked about. Mental growth. Mental growth has to do with what you feed your mind with, and is also a function of your background and your upbringing, the way you see life in general. But it's again, some people say, um, what your life turn out to be in the future is the relationship you build and the books you read, which I think is good, which I think is true because the books you read have a way of influencing your thinking and making you mature mentally. And this doesn't necessarily have to be a book in your field. It could just be any book at all, but you're reading it to develop your mental thinking, and it's helping you to be more productive. And there's no way you can even be productive if you are not reading the thing that is you're supposed to be doing. So if you're not knowledgeable in your core responsibility, then that's a big minus. So you need to develop your mental growth by understanding what you're doing. In my book, I outline exactly how you need to do that. You need to understand exactly what you're doing so you can do it well. And the way to understand it is to read about it and read and read. Now, reading um, doesn't have to be book, or should I say learning doesn't have to be book. So mental growth is not just about reading book. It could also be listening to videos, and I specifically added in my book that it is absorbing information. So absorbing information can be listening to audiobook, it could be watching a YouTube video, it could be any all of those. So it's very important that you understand what works for you. Some people don't like reading, so you don't have to say, "Oh, if I'm not reading, it means I'm losing out." Not necessarily, but there are things that you have to read. So if you work in an office, for example, and they send you email, you have to read those. So that's not what I'm saying. I'm talking about learning. So if it's learning, you can do your learning on YouTube, you can do learning on Clubhouse, you can do learning on Twitter, or even on Instagram. That I love learning. Of course, you see my page on Instagram and see all of those learning stuff that I share every now and then. So those are part of learning. It doesn't have to be a physical book that you're reading. So and there are platforms that you can subscribe to learn, which are some of them are quite pricey, some of them are cheap. But even if you have to pay for the knowledge that you're acquiring, it is worth it because you would need it someday. So mental growth is very important, and that's something that you should also take as important. The next I point is your emotional intelligence, which I think it's something that a lot of people are lacking. But of course, it's something again like every other areas that you need to develop. Emotional intelligence, emotional growth is a place or a point that you can develop. And some of these emotional intelligence can be your ability to learn soft skills. And this is very important. Some of the areas that you can learn soft skills are time management, cultivating resistance in what you learn when you do physical exercise, when you continue to repeat the same thing in routine, you're learning resistance. But that is sort of a soft skill that you can apply on your job. I talked about time management, and time management can mean that you have, before you start working in the day, you have set out some things that you need to do and when you need to do them. So it helps you to be organized. If you're not orderly in your work, then you'll find that you're probably missing deadlines and you're not doing what you're supposed to do. So there's this table that you would find of a square talk about time management that you can Google, and it is whether it is urgent and important. You have to do it. Urgent but not important, not urgent but important, not urgent, not important. So in that order, the one that you can do, the one that you can delegate, the one that you can postpone, and the one that is not important that you can do without. So those are four areas that you probably need to to start looking at to develop your time management skills, which is part of your emotional intelligence or emotional growth. Now, your emotional intelligence also extends to your ability to understand people that you work with. And we have two broad main categorization of this. You have the introverts and you have the extroverts. There are people um, that think on their feet, and there's some that have to think about it later. So your ability to understand how people work also would help you to be more productive in your work. Some people prefer um, you to respect their private nature. Some don't mind their independent nature. Some appreciate your need to work alone, not like they can't function in a team, but they just need that ability to work alone. And so you understand what works best for them and allow them to do that. Some function better when they are collaborating. Then another soft skill that you can learn is listening actively. I was reading recently about listening. The art of listening is actually an active activity. So, ability to listen and understand what the other person is communicating is a skill that is also important, which is part of this emotional skill or growth that we're talking about. And of course, as you're learning, it's important to learn new things in all of these areas that we're talking about. Ability to improve on yourself in every area. So you can set goals in all of these four categories that I've mentioned of mental growth, emotional growth, physical growth, and spiritual. Like I mentioned before I started these four aspects, I talked about spiritual aspects of our life, which a lot of people don't take as serious as the other aspects. I know that all of these are influenced by probably our background or our personality, what we are attracted to. Someone can spend 3 hours every day in a gym and they won't feel like they have done much. Some can spend 3 hours reading. Well, I think it's the ability to balance all of these four areas that counts. And so this I'll just round up this session by summarizing what I've said so far. And the target is 20-30 minutes, like I mentioned before. I've talked about personal development, something you need to actively engage in, something you need to actively engage in. Sometimes your company might help you on the type of training you should do. Some other time it might just be that you're on your own. You have to figure out what type of training you need. You know the areas that you need development on. You know the areas that you don't know very well. So these are the areas that you should start learning on. So there are a lot of learning materials that you can get. For most structured companies, you have all of this, but if your company is not that structured, there are external resources that you can get to develop these areas. So learning is active and it's something that you have to learn to do by yourself. If the company is helping you, fine. But if the company is helping you and you're just following the company's learning plan, because everybody in the company will be following the learning plan, you would be in the same shoes with them. But if you look out to make extra effort to do more, then you stand out from the pack, and that's what is important. And we talked about the Maslow hierarchy of needs, of how you move from your physiological need to self actualization. And self actualization is where you reach. We have developed all of these four categories of life, really. So you have the physical growth or energy, you have the mental energy or growth, then you have the emotional energy or growth, and you have the spiritual energy of growth. All of these four areas are important, and you you need to balance them. Don't invest too much time doing only one and feel like, oh, I'm growing physically, I'm doing all the exercise, everything is okay. Not really. You cannot now say, oh, I'm doing all the mental, I'm reading a lot of books, and that's helping. Not really. Or I'm building myself up emotionally, I'm highly emotional, intelligent. That's not enough. And spiritual, you can't go all spiritual without relating it to the physical. Because you stay in this world, you need some level of physical activity. So you need a blend of all of these four categories to be a better professional. And I hope you have found the session useful. Some of the things I have shared, especially about developing your um, mental skill, ability to read and learn the skill that you need to succeed in your work. I have them written in my book. You can find a copy of my book on my website as well as on Amazon.com. The other book I've written is the Let's Talk About Money, which is also available on my website and on Amazon.com. If you have any question, please just drop a message and I'll respond. Thank you all for joining so far. Yeah, just let me know if you have any question, and I would be willing to provide some answers. Otherwise, I still have about 3 minutes, so I can take a question or some questions. Otherwise, I'll just post this later on for others to have a listen when they join. Thank you for joining today, and I'll see you next week when we're discussing some other interesting topic. Okay,